October 2020, Chase Miola lost his life. My heart fell apart. I felt lost for the Miola family and for every parent at OSU. I remember somehow on Facebook, back in I think November 2020, there was just parents going back and forth about what had happened. And through that, I believe it was myself and Irene Hendrick had started speaking.
Buckeyes First Safe Ohio State came to be, I would say that it was started initially by a petition that Irene Hendricks started after Chase was murdered, asking parents to sign the petition regarding safety concerns in and around campus. And I signed that and then direct messaged Irene on Facebook and asked if I could help in any way. We were not Buckeyes First Safe Ohio State at that point. We were just a petition and a group of concerned parents that grew, and I would say contracted, relatively quickly in the aftermath. And we started making a lot of phone calls to the university admin, and they were responsive, telling us that a task force was being created, and that they would have recommendations before Thanksgiving.
I myself reached out to the police department, OSU Police. I reached out to President Johnson. I reached out to Melissa Shivers. I can't even think of all their names, but there's a whole list of them, Monica Mall, just so I can get my points across as a parent.
We kept asking, what is being done? What is being checked off on the recommendations? How are we standing? And, we just weren't making any headway whatsoever. We weren't gaining any traction, and we didn't see the university acting urgently or implementing their recommendations urgently either.
As we felt like we were not getting as far as we were wanting with the university, we were thinking, okay, we need to get this out. There's other parents that are feeling like this. We just decided to then create the Facebook page once we had the name.
And then in September of this year, Margaret Miola asked to join our Facebook page. And that was really a title shift for us. She had said that she really wanted to put up billboards. She had been kind of watching from the sidelines and saw that crime was back up, particularly at the beginning of the school year when our students moved in. It was very bad. And she joined with a lot of force. And we started a GoFundMe page. We raised $30,000 within a few days, and the billboards were up by the end of the week.
We are all committed to working hand in hand until this problem is solved in our community and in our city. Since the tragic shooting death of Ohio State student Chase Miola last year, the university has invested more than $1 million in safety measures. It is not enough, and we must do more. Today, I have directed the university to invest an additional $2 million of funding per year over the next decade to enhance safety and security on and around our campus for a total of at least $20 million. The additional funding that I'm announcing today begins immediately and will be dedicated to the following enhancements.
$20 million that was offered up, which sounds, when you hear $20 million, over 10 years. It, it sounds very impressive. It also came about or was announced less than 24 hours after our first billboards went up. So I think, again, it was not something that they had already in their pocket. I think it was a reaction to what was going on with our group and with the students and with the crime.
To me, it's a number. It means nothing. To me, start showing the action. Start hiring the police. Start locking the doors. Make the change visible. Money to me is not visible.
I mean, our mission is very simple. We want our students to be safe, and we want the university to act urgently and implement their recommendations and make them permanent. So, for instance, in lighting, we did our huge walk for the 1-year anniversary of Chase's murder, but also to highlight the low light in the university district. Interestingly, leading up until that point, the university had put up a bunch of mobile light towers that we know are rented, and that's fine if you're going to rent them for forever. We know that's probably not the case. But as we said, just because it's better doesn't mean it's good. It should be very, very well lit there, and it's still not.
That's been probably the biggest frustration, is the lack of urgency from the university. They're always reactive instead of proactive, and it should not have taken a year to get those light towers up or the surveillance cameras up.
We're partnering with the city to try to upgrade the lighting in the university district to LED lights, which are brighter. And they have plans to do that in different neighborhoods throughout the city, but we're working with them now to see if we can speed up those upgrades in the university district to make it brighter. In the meantime, we have all of those mobile camera trailers out there to try to add some light to the area.
So off-campus lighting is a really hard topic because so first we think in the mindset of like university district is in the city of Columbus. And when we are trying to replace off-campus lighting in the district, we basically ask the city to make another expenditure to pay the financial support for them. But if you think in a city standpoint, is why are we paying for this when there are other neighborhoods who barely have light, but there are privileged college kids who live in the university district saying that because I need to walk back to my house after a party at 3 a.m., so give me more lights. So I think that is the issue like we bumped into kind of on the lighting task force. When the recommendation was initially presented to the city basically said that, oh, there's too much financial challenges, we're not able to carry that through, which means that like they did not take the recommendation out of there. But city was super receptive from the recommendation. So they took it as kind of a outline of the existing issues, and they're working on improving that. So we weren't able to make a lot of progress, but this year with USG's partnership and with Office Administration and Planning, we're able to start off some projects, and it's happening right now.
We just kept hearing things like, oh, lighting is really the city of Columbus. And you're the largest employer in Central Ohio and the fourth, I believe, largest employer in the state of Ohio. We can't imagine that you don't, as a university, wield far more influence than certainly a bunch of moms who live out of state. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to hear excuses as to why you can't get the lighting up or why you fixed 18 broken lights. It shouldn't have taken a student to be murdered to fix 18 broken lights to begin with. And second of all, just figure out a way to get it done. Because we certainly are not going to be able to lean into the city of Columbus or the state of Ohio.
I am a criminologist. My PhD is in criminal justice and criminology, and I've been engaged in research and intervention work in urban communities for the last 30 years. And my primary interest is kind of the social dynamics of communities around crime prevention generally and violence prevention more specifically. The cameras and the lighting certainly help with the fear factor. Deterrence only works if there aren't other really good targets just down the road that, where the light isn't or where the camera isn't. If they're trying to decide between one location and another, and it's just a matter of like going down 3 blocks or whatever, the unprotected area is the most vulnerable, but it could be protected in other ways that don't have anything to do with technology or what the police do. Be protected by those cohesive neighbors who know each other, who look out for each other.
OSU police have jurisdiction for only things that are on university property or owned by the university. Columbus police have jurisdiction for everything else where all of our off-campus students live. We have a few areas where we can work together, and so we have something called joint patrol, where an OSU officer rides with a city officer, and then they will have jurisdiction off campus to help when they do that. We have something else called crime interdiction, which is just like joint patrol, only it's not someone's full-time assignment. It's you sign up for overtime, and the university pays Columbus police officers and OSU police officers on overtime to do extra patrols out in those districts. And we have always done that, but we're just trying to help and do more of that this year.
So same with the joint patrol. We're gonna, work on joint patrol, and we thought that there was that, but there was only one OSU PD officer that was patrolling jointly with CPD. And so I think a little bit of that, be honest, be transparent, and because some of that is really misleading.
As far as police staffing goes, every police department in the area has suffered some losses in terms of numbers. So we as well had about 8 people over the last year who have retired or moved on, which for an agency maybe the size of Columbus Police, where they have almost 2,000 sworn officers, that wouldn't be as big of a deal. But 8 for us is pretty significant. And then Columbus Police has had a couple hundred that have moved on to other careers or retired. And so both agencies are really trying to fill those vacancies, and that's what we've been doing over the last year, is hiring a lot of officers to fill those vacancies. And then also about a year ago, just a few months into President Johnson's tenure, she authorized us to add 5 on top of that and said, when you get caught up with your hiring, add 5 more so we can try to do more of that joint patrol on things across High Street to help the city.
We, of course, are, supportive of more patrols. We are supportive of having OSU PD and the CPD working jointly. I would like to see that maybe there could be more officers, but we also realize that they are spread thin. They are short-staffed. I think what we would like to see from either Mayor Ginther or city officials is more support for those officers, maybe some changes in policies that encourages more people to want to apply for the position, and wanting those that are there to stay. So I think as far as that goes, definitely the city could support the CPD more than they are.
Currently, the task force also meets twice per semester to review all the implementation process of all the recommendation items. But at the same time, also evaluate if we need to update any of those or add more information in there to broader other scope of public safety initiatives. So as student body president, I sit on there as a member. So we are actually meeting soon, probably in 2 weeks, to once again convene to evaluate our current status of public safety initiatives. So for that initiative, I think a lot of you share promoting is the things we post on our social media and any communication channels, is promote both policing and non-policing resources. because our students at Ohio State understand safety differently. We need to have resources that caters to their specific needs. So specifically for non-policing resources are how we can have our students being able to be trained to do self-defense, have more off-campus lighting, emergency blue poles, or like personal safety device. And the policing resources specifically coming out of that is our university's partnership with OSU PD's partnership with CPD, how the university is planning on expanding joint patrol program to have a more OSU PD officer who are trained to engage with student issues to be able to support students directly instead of having CPD to engage with them.
The Buckeye Block Watch is essentially a community patrol, so majority of the people that are a part of this group either have some type of background in community safety or they are a part of the Columbus community. We've been kind of talking about is like how can we make sure that this is like student informed as well as like community informed, because like Jacob mentioned, we are a part of the larger Columbus community, and to just focus on ourselves would be like short-sighted, so we have to look at like the broader impact. So essentially these patrols, like these like the Buckeye Block Watch acts as a service that is offering resources and kind of like mitigating before anything happens that would like require policing. For example, if there was like a robbery or something like that, like that's where like they would like end up calling the police, but they kind of act as like an in-between, as a preventative method versus a punitive method, which policing is. So looking at how can we mitigate harm before it happens as well as like in the moment, being trained in first aid, CPR, and then they're trained in like mental health, like de-escalation. So that's something that's really powerful, because we've talked a lot about how policing can be extremely harmful with mental health situations. And that's something that OSU PD has done a lot of work on, of making sure that their officers are trained as best as possible for mental health de-escalation.
I created a data set that has all the homicides that have occurred in the city of Columbus since the year 2000. And it is 2,340 homicides. And the geographic pattern over time is very consistent. And like analysis I just did last night, in 2021, there were 204 homicides. And they happened in 14% of the block groups in the city. The rest of the block groups of the city had 0 homicides. You go back all the way to 2000, and 55% of the block groups in the city of Columbus have never had a homicide in that time period. It's concentrated, it's consistently concentrated in specific areas. You know, we can't keep letting these numbers go up and not do something about it, especially when we have prevention programs that are effective, and we're investing a ton of money as a city, as a county, as Ohio State in safety, but we're not necessarily tracking whether or not we're getting returns on those investments.
Campus safety, especially when currently the crime rate is on the rise post-COVID, because a lot of people being locked at home for a really long time, people losing jobs, and they're trying to make up for that. So how we combat that is one of the issues a lot of students concerned about. Another specific issue is policing. Do we need more police or less police officers? So I think from the USG standpoint, we always think in the mindset about how we support our whole student body, but not the majority of our student body. So we need to make sure the most marginalized of our student body is protected. Then we can go from there and to achieve the holistic well-being of all of our students here at Ohio State. So in general, what we're looking at is how we can work with the city to have more programs like a Buckeye Block Watch. So essentially, if you look at the criminal demographics of a university district, a lot of them are between 16 to 19 years old. A lot of them, because when they're committing the crime, it's because they think they can get away with it. So I think programs like Buckeye Block Watch is just to basically inform them that someone is watching here, and please do not do something that you're going to regret. And another issue related with that is assess the effectiveness of policing. Is policing really effective? We see a lot of like pro-police, anti-police rhetoric going around, but there's no empirical data supporting that policing is actually increasing our policing actually connects with the reduce our crime rate. Because if someone pull off a gun, points at you in the middle of the night, like police officer will not be able to help you at that specific moment, because they're really, really spontaneous. And these crimes need to be protected. How we can protect that? People from suffering from these similar crimes is increasing the lighting, like to reduce these crimes from happening from the first place, or be able to like increase education or awareness. We live in the city, that's something we cannot change, because no matter how influential Ohio State is, there's no way we can fix the crime rate going around in the city. So recently we heard a lot about the gun robbery and gunpoint crimes, but these crimes also happens in a lot of the neighborhoods, including like German Village, like Dublin, these like city areas that's more well off, like quote unquote, comparing with University District. So like if that is the case, like I think the city officers are also trying their best to improve that. But as students, we also have the personal responsibilities to protect our own safety and other safety. Like if you're walking home at 3 a.m., like the best thing to do is probably call Live Smart, right? Or be walking in packs and not go to a little alleys that's like there's no lighting at all to just in general protect personal safety. Another one is awareness of protect against housebreakings. How we install devices on our in our backyard, on windows, on the front doors, stuff like that, to basically deter crime from happening from first place. So I think a lot of these are things we can do to work alongside with university's initiative to basically include and increase like the public safety in our university district.
And then how do you feel about the Columbus Police Department's response? Would you like to see anything change?
My heart actually really goes out to the Columbus Police, because I've spoken to several police officers, females and males, within the past 12 months. And I will tell you, they want to help, but they're scared to help because their job has been taken away from them the way they were trained to help us. So I would love to see more Ohio State Police. I would love for them to get the respect that they deserve. I have zero respect for the Ohio State mayor and governor and for the criminal justice system that this nation has created within the past 2 years. The defunding of police is disgraceful. The letting criminals out without bail is disgraceful. Taking a criminal, arresting them, and releasing them the next morning, why would they not keep committing the crime? Kinty Mitchell, I'm going to use his name, okay? He was let out Thursday night and committed murder Saturday. Why? He should have still been in jail.
There's such a backlog with the courts, and like it's frustrating because on the one hand there have been all of these efforts to not incarcerate juveniles, not pass down heavy sentences, but as the jail gets crowded, as the backlog of cases, like, you know, people have constitutional rights, we have to move things through a certain amount, we can't confine people before they're convicted in a certain amount of time. So all of that, like the pandemic has made any problems that the systems had so much worse.
Looking at the university public safety notices and the neighborhood safety notices and the difference between those. So a public safety notice is something that happens on campus, and that is like required to report, I believe. Yeah.
Baccalaureate Act, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. And then neighborhood safety notices are not required to be shared by the university, and that's more from a place of like, hey, we want you to know that this is something that's happening. And a conversation we've been having a lot is, how are these neighborhood safety notices encouraging students to continue to grow, and how are they encouraging them to think holistically as they move out of college? How are they utilizing the resources in the community that they live in? How are they being intentional in building relationships and connections with the people that they live around? And how are they looking out for their own safety while also looking out for the safety of their community?
I think the other thing that I've noticed from students coming through Instagram is the lack of notices. And I know they've explained it 14 times what the 3 different tiers of notification are, but they have to understand that that's an antiquated system, and these students live in a world of, immediacy, social media stories that disappear in a day. If there's a crime that is vetted, they can put it out on their Instagram story just to alert students. There's a reported crime here with a person with a gun. And we're also hoping that they are going to adapt a new sort of alert system beyond the Buckeye Alert, which that's the one that we really all seem to understand. That's, could be an active shooter scenario, that's a shelter in place. But the other two, the neighborhood safety notice and I don't even know what the other one is called, but they have parameters that it doesn't mean anything to anybody. If there's a crime committed, what is the harm in letting students know?
I guess too, because you're a student, I think that it would behoove the OSU PD, OSU and all of that to get together with the students and say, hey, what would work for you? Because if they were to go and put out a whole bunch of alerts and not alerts, but the notices and stuff that are more common that you guys get, if you get too many, do you start ignoring them, or do you appreciate them as a heads up?
Unfortunately, with crime, like, everybody thinks they're an expert. Everybody thinks they know. Like, is it good to get an alert on your phone that there's a robbery happening 3 blocks away? You know what? We don't know. We don't have the evidence systematically to say, like, if you're a 20-something female white woman at Ohio State's campus and you get this alert, what does it do to you psychologically? And if you were a prior victim, what does it do to you? Like, those are the kinds of studies that we need to be doing, because the perception of crime, how vulnerable you feel, and the messaging that you get around particularly violent crime can be paralyzing, and that makes things worse. And one of the things that makes a community resilient against crime is people feeling efficacious to do something about it. And what that means is they're protecting their own property. They're aware of their surroundings, and I see Ohio State doing a lot of things to try to, educate people on those types of responsibilities. And I also teach research methods, and this past year decided, since students were talking about crime and their safety and really curious to know, like, what an expert thinks about this, I just decided to engage them in the process of learning methods by doing it. Like, one observation that people made during their presentations in the class that was, I think, really profound was many individual students feeling like they were the only ones that felt that way. And then when, they interviewed people, they talked to people, they made their presentations, realized that, wow, many people are feeling this way, and even feeling guilty for feeling this way. Like, one scenario was feeling vulnerable around unhoused people, and that made the students feel really guilty. Like, I'm not a bad person, I don't want something bad to happen, but they scare me. And, multiple people said that, and so then, what will the response be? Well, there's a whole network of agencies that work to help unhoused people in our city, and the university's connected with that. So again, a holistic approach that is looking at the dynamics as they're unfolding, and really just understanding that this is a tricky problem. It's, the main crime that the 3 months of data was motor vehicle theft and motor vehicle break-ins, and students in my class had that experience as well, and talked about that in their presentations.
I would like to see the students feel empowered to speak up and advocate for themselves. I mean, you guys are in the community, you know, you live there, you know, and you see, and you're on the ground. And I think as one student starts speaking and you realize that you're not the only one that has the same concerns and fears, you'll see that there are others. We saw it at the Light Up the Night. I mean, we had over 300, 400 people there, and most of them were students. And that, I think, was very empowering for a lot of the students to see and to be able to take that energy and continue, and the momentum, and continue taking that to the university and be heard, make them hear you.
This morning, I actually reached out to Mrs. Miola to make sure that she would feel comfortable with me doing an interview. And she said to me, let your voice be heard. You know, let's get this place safe for all of the children. I think that if students, I think of course they know. They see the billboards, they see the lights going up, they know it's parents that are doing it. And we're begging for the university to do more.
So, you know, it's a big issue that instead of like everyone having a position, we should be having a dialogue, you know, and that the broader that dialogue is. So maybe you talk to people who have been convicted of a violent crime, you talk to people who have been victimized, you know, get to see how complex like the causes are and the consequences.
What would you say to concerned parents and students about just crime both on campus and in the university district?
I would say we're as concerned as they are about crime, and we're doing everything that we can think of and putting every resource we have to bear to try to make them safer. And every time there's a new resource available, we evaluate it. We have weekly meetings to go over crime stats and think of any new ideas. We benchmark with other schools, hired a consultant to evaluate the things we've already done to see what works best and to see if we're missing anything. So there's not a day that goes by that we're not thinking about their safety and trying to do everything that we can to make them safe.